Sarah's massive wings beat against the toxic air of Kythera Prime as she descended through the sulphurous clouds. Her crimson scales gleamed even in the dim light filtering through the planet's perpetual storm cover. As a Draconian scout, she had seen many worlds, but few as hostile as this mining planet on the outer rim of known space. The distress beacon had been broadcasting for 3 standard days now, growing weaker with each passing hour. Most species would have written off whoever was trapped down there, but Sarah's people had strict codes about abandoning those in need, even if those in need happened to be humans. She landed heavily on a rocky outcropping near the source of the signal, her claws scraping against the mineral-rich stone. The air here was barely breathable, filled with heavy metals and acidic compounds that made even her enhanced respiratory system work overtime. How any carbon-based life could survive here was beyond her understanding. The mining facility sprawled across the valley below, a maze of twisted metal and collapsed structures. 3 days ago, a seismic event had triggered a cascade failure in the facility's life support systems. The automated distress beacon painted a grim picture. Atmospheric processors offline, main power grid destroyed, and emergency shelters compromised by toxic gas leaks. Sarah activated her scanner, sweeping the ruins for signs of life. The readings were faint but unmistakable. 27 heat signatures clustered in what appeared to be a reinforced section of the main processing plant. They were alive, but barely. Atmospheric readings showed dangerously high levels of hydrogen sulfide and carbon monoxide in their immediate vicinity. She approached the facility cautiously, her enhanced senses picking up the acrid smell of melted polymers and corroded metal. The main entrance had been sealed by an emergency blast door, its surface scarred by desperate attempts to cut through from the inside. Sarah placed her massive hand against the door and felt the vibrations of movement beyond. They were still fighting to survive. With careful application of her strength, Sarah began to pry at the edges of the blast door. The metal groaned and buckled under her grip, but the door had been designed to withstand industrial accidents. It would take time she wasn't sure the trapped beings had. As she worked, she activated her comm unit and broadcast on standard rescue frequencies. This is Scout Sarah of the Draconian Exploration Corps. I am attempting rescue operations at Kythera Prime mining facility. Any vessels in range, please respond. Static answered her call. She was truly alone out here. The blast door finally gave way with a screech of tortured metal. Sarah squeezed through the opening, her 7-foot frame barely fitting through the gap. The air inside was thick with smoke and chemical vapors that made her eyes water despite her protective membranes. She followed the life signs deeper into the facility, navigating through corridors filled with debris and the occasional spark from damaged electrical systems. The humans' voices reached her before she saw them, speaking in their rapid, clipped language. They sounded weak but determined. The survivors had barricaded themselves in what had once been the facility's emergency shelter. When Sarah's imposing silhouette appeared in the doorway, the humans fell silent. She could smell their fear, sharp and acrid, mixing with the chemical reek of the damaged facility. "I am here to help," she said in carefully practiced standard, her voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the metal walls. The humans stared at her with wide eyes. Most had never seen a Draconian in person. To them, she must have looked like something from their ancient myths, a creature of scales and fire standing in their darkest hour. One of the humans, a woman with short gray hair and engineer's coveralls, stepped forward. "Are you real?" she asked, her voice hoarse from breathing the contaminated air. "Very real," Sarah replied, "and very here to get you out." The woman's name was Commander Chun, and she quickly briefed Sarah on their situation. The 27 survivors represented the entire remaining crew of the mining facility. They had been fighting for their lives since the disaster struck, rationing their emergency oxygen and trying to repair the atmosphere processors with salvage parts. "We've got maybe 6 hours of breathable air left," Chun explained. "The toxic gases are seeping in faster than we can scrub them out." Sarah surveyed the group. There were a mix of miners, engineers, and support staff. Several showed signs of chemical exposure, their eyes red and streaming, their breathing labored. A few appear to be suffering from more serious poisoning, lying motionless on makeshift beds. "Can you move them?" Sarah asked, gesturing toward the most severely affected. "We'll carry them if we have to," Chen replied without hesitation. "Nobody gets left behind." Sarah felt something stir in her chest at those words. She had heard stories about human tenacity, their refusal to abandon their own, even in the face of impossible odds. Seeing it firsthand was different from hearing tales. "The route out is treacherous," Sarah warned. "The facility is still unstable. We will need to move quickly and carefully." Chen nodded grimly. "What about your ship? Can it carry all of us?" Sarah's expression darkened. "I came alone, on reconnaissance. My transport can carry perhaps 10 of your people safely." The humans exchanged glances. Sarah could smell the spike of fear in the air, but also something else. Determination. Resolve. "Then, we make multiple trips," Chen said simply. "Take the most critical cases first. The facility may not remain stable long enough for multiple evacuations," Sarah warned. "Then we better work fast." One of the younger humans spoke up, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. Sarah began organizing the evacuation, using her knowledge of structural engineering to plot the safest route through the damaged facility. As she worked, she found herself impressed by the humans' organization and mutual support. Even in their weakened state, they moved with purpose, helping their injured comrades and gathering essential supplies. The first group of evacuees consisted of the 7 most critically injured. Sarah led them through the twisting corridors of the facility, her enhanced senses alerting her to weak spots in the structure and dangerous gas pockets. Twice they had to detour around collapsed sections, and once Sarah had to use her strength to clear a path through twisted debris. When they reached her scout ship, Sarah quickly activated the medical bay's atmospheric scrubbers and life support systems. The humans huddled in the clean air, some of them weeping with relief as their tortured lungs finally found respite. "Take them to Nexus Station," Chen instructed as Sarah prepared to lift off. "The medical facilities there can treat chemical exposure." "What about the rest of you?" Sarah asked. Chen's jaw was set in determination. "We'll be here when you get back." As Sarah's ship lifted off from the toxic surface of Kythera Prime, she found herself thinking about the humans she had left behind. Their courage in the face of certain death was unlike anything she had encountered in her years of exploration. Most species would have descended into panic or despair. Instead, these humans had organized, adapted, and faced their dire circumstances with a kind of grim optimism that was both inspiring and disturbing. The flight to Nexus Station took 4 hours. As soon as her passengers were safely transferred to the medical facility, Sarah refueled and prepared for the return journey. The station's communication officer tried to convince her to wait for a proper rescue ship with more capacity. "The facility structure is compromised," the officer argued. "Going back is suicide." Sarah's response was simple. "There are still 20 humans down there." The return flight felt longer than the first journey. Sarah pushed her scout ship's engines harder than recommended, racing against time and the inevitable collapse of the mining facility. As she approached Kythera Prime's atmosphere, her sensors detected troubling readings from the planet's surface. Seismic activity was increasing. When she landed near the facility, she could see that the situation had deteriorated. New cracks had appeared in the main structure, and several of the outer buildings had collapsed entirely. The air was thick with dust and chemical vapors, creating an almost impenetrable haze. Sarah made her way back to the emergency shelter, her heart pounding with urgency. She found the remaining humans exactly where she had left them, still maintaining their vigil in the face of increasingly impossible odds. "So, Shin called out as she appeared in the doorway. "Thank the stars you're back. How much time do we have?" Sarah asked. "The atmospheric scrubbers failed 20 minutes ago," one of the engineers reported. "We're on emergency reserves now." Sarah quickly assessed the remaining 19 survivors. Most were showing advanced signs of chemical exposure, but they were still mobile and determined. She began organizing them for the evacuation, knowing that this would be her last chance to get them all out. As they prepared to leave, the facility shuddered around them. A deep, ominous rumble echoed through the metal corridors, and dust rained down from the ceiling. "Move!" Sarah commanded, leading the humans toward the exit. They ran through corridors that seemed to shift and groan with each passing moment. Sarah used her bulk to shield the humans from falling debris, her scales deflecting chunks of metal and concrete. When they reached a collapsed section that blocked their path, she tore through the obstruction with her bare hands, her claws rending metal as if it were paper. The exit was in sight when the final catastrophic failure began. The facility's main support structure, weakened by days of seismic activity and chemical corrosion, began to buckle and collapse. Sarah herded the humans toward her ship as the world came apart around them. They reached the scout ship just as a massive section of the facility crashed down behind them. Sarah's vessel was designed for a crew of 3, but she managed to squeeze all 19 humans into the passenger compartment and cargo bay. It would be uncomfortable and dangerous, but it would get them off this dying planet. As they lifted off, Sarah looked back at the mining facility one last time. The entire structure was collapsing in on itself, consumed by the toxic atmosphere and unstable geology of Kythera Prime. In another few hours, there would be nothing left but rubble and poison gas. But 27 humans were alive because she had chosen to answer their distress call. During the flight back to Nexus Station, Commander Chen made her way to the cockpit where Sarah was piloting the overloaded vessel. "Why?" she asked simply. Sarah didn't need clarification, because it was the right thing to do. You risked your life for strangers. Your people and mine aren't even officially allies. Sarah glanced back at her passenger, noting the intensity in the human's eyes. "Do your people have a saying about leaving others behind?" Chun smiled, an expression that transformed her weathered face. "We do. Leave no one behind." "Then, perhaps our species are not so different," Sarah replied. When they reached Nexus Station, the reunion between the two groups of survivors was emotional and overwhelming. Sarah watched from a distance as the humans embraced, wept, and celebrated their impossible survival. Medical teams rushed to treat the new arrivals, but it was clear that all 27 would recover fully. As Sarah prepared to file her mission report and continue her scheduled patrol route, Commander Chen approached her one final time. "I've sent a full report about what you did here to Earth Command," she said. "You should know that word of this is going to spread." Sarah tilted her massive head. "Is that a problem?" Chen's smile was enigmatic. "Not a problem, but humans have long memories when it comes to those who help us. You might be surprised by how grateful we can be." Sarah didn't fully understand the implications of Chen's words at the time. She completed her patrol, filed her reports, and returned to her duties as a Draconian scout. The rescue at Kythera Prime became just another entry in her service record, notable perhaps for the unusual circumstances, but otherwise unremarkable. It would be several weeks before she learned just how remarkable the humans considered her actions to be. 3 weeks after the rescue at Kythera Prime, Sarah was conducting a routine survey of an asteroid field when her communications array lit up with an incoming transmission. The signal was strong and clear, originating from a massive vessel that had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. "Draconian Scout Vessel. This is Captain Martinez aboard the UES Defiant. Please respond." Sarah frowned at her displays. The ship's registry identified it as a human-heavy cruiser, but what was it doing in this remote sector? Her current assignment was in neutral space, far from any established human trade routes. "UES Defiant, this is Scout Sarah. What is your purpose in this system?" "We've been looking for you." "Scout Sarah. Request permission to approach for a face-to-face meeting." The massive human warship maneuvered closer to her position with surprising grace for something its size. Sarah's scanners indicated it was carrying a full crew complement and what appeared to be several smaller escort vessels. This was no chance encounter. When the ships were within docking range, Captain Martinez requested to come aboard. Sarah agreed, curious about what could bring a human fleet commander so far from home space just to find her. Captain Martinez was a weathered man in his 50s, bearing the kind of scars that spoke of serious combat experience. When he stepped onto Sarah's modest scout ship, he was accompanied by a small honor guard, and someone Sarah recognized immediately. "Commander Chun," Sarah said, surprise coloring her deep voice. Chun stepped forward with a broad smile. "Hello again, Sarah. I told you that word would spread." "What is this about?" Sarah asked, looking between the two humans. Captain Martinez cleared his throat. "Scout Sarah, on behalf of the United Earth Fleet and the Colonial Defense Force, I want to formally thank you for your actions at Kithra Prime. Your heroism saved 27 human lives at considerable risk to your own." "I was simply doing my duty," Sarah replied, uncomfortable with the formal tone. "What you did went far beyond duty," Chen interjected. "You had no obligation to risk your life for humans. Your own command structure would have understood if you had simply reported our location and continued your mission." Martinez nodded. "The survivors of Kithra Prime have all returned to their families because of your actions. When their stories reached Earth, they caused quite a stir. We have something we'd like to show you." The captain activated a portable holographic display. Images flickered to life, showing news broadcasts from across human space. Sarah watched in amazement as her rescue mission was recounted on various news networks. Her image appeared alongside descriptions of her heroism, and she saw footage of the survivors describing their rescue. 27 families have their loved ones back because of one draconian's courage, one news anchor was saying. This unprecedented act of interspecies heroism has captured the imagination of citizens across human space. "This is unnecessary," Sarah protested. "I did what anyone would have done." "That's where you're wrong," Martinez said quietly. 3 other ships detected that distress beacon. 2 ignored it entirely, and 1 reported it to authorities but took no action. You were the only one who chose to act. Chen activated another section of the display. "Look at this." The hologram showed what appeared to be a massive construction project in Earth's orbital shipyards. Sarah could see the framework of an enormous vessel taking shape, its design unlike anything in the current human fleet. "The UES Sarah," Martinez announced. "Earth's first dedicated search and rescue dreadnought, named in your honor. When she's completed, she'll be able to carry out rescue operations that would have been impossible before." Sarah stared at the display in shock. The ship was beautiful, its lines blending human engineering efficiency with aesthetic elements that seemed inspired by draconian architecture. "You named a ship after me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just any ship," Chen said. "The most advanced rescue vessel ever built by human hands. She'll carry enough medical facilities to serve as a mobile hospital, atmospheric processors to create breathable environments on hostile worlds, and defensive systems to protect rescue operations in dangerous space." Martinez stepped closer. "But that's not all. The families of the Kithra Prime survivors have established something called the Sarah Foundation. It's dedicated to promoting interspecies cooperation and supporting rescue operations throughout the galaxy." The holographic display shifted again, showing Sarah images from across human space. Children holding drawings of dragons. Rescue workers wearing patches with her name and likeness. Memorial services for lost miners where her actions were commemorated as an example of the highest ideals of sentient behavior. "I don't understand," Sarah said slowly. "Why has this become so significant to your people?" Chen exchanged glances with Martinez before answering. "Humans have a concept called paying it forward. When someone does something good for us, we try to spread that goodness to others. What you did at Kithra Prime reminded us of what we can accomplish when different species work together." Martinez activated another section of the display. "Look at these statistics." The hologram showed charts and graphs tracking various metrics across human space over the past 3 weeks. Sarah saw increases in applications for rescue services, donations to interspecies aid organizations, and, perhaps most significantly, requests for assignment to joint operations with non-human partners. Your actions have inspired a generation of young humans to pursue careers in emergency services, Martinez explained. Applications to fleet rescue academies are up 300%. The Draconian embassy on Earth has been flooded with requests for cultural exchange programs. But surely this level of response is unusual, Sarah protested. Humans respond strongly to individual acts of heroism, Chen explained. We tell stories about people who risk everything to save others. Those stories become part of our culture, passed down from generation to generation. You've become part of our mythology now, Sarah. The dragon who saved 27 humans and asked for nothing in return. Martinez pulled up one final section of the display, which brings us to why we're here. The hologram showed a star chart marking several systems along the border between human space and unexplored regions. Red indicators marked various locations where distress signals have been detected or emergency situations were developing. We're organizing a joint human draconian rescue task force, Martinez announced. 7 ships, mixed crews, dedicated to responding to emergency situations throughout this sector. We'd like you to serve as our liaison and senior rescue specialist. Sarah looked at the star chart, noting the ambitious scope of the proposed operation. This would require approval from my superiors. Already obtained, a new voice said. Sarah turned to see another figure emerging from the human shuttle. This newcomer was distinctly non-human, with the characteristic green-scaled skin and crested head of a draconian official. Sarah recognized him immediately as Commander Thek, one of the senior officers from her home fleet. "Commander," Sarah said, straightening to attention. Thek waved away the formality. "At ease, Scouts, Sarah. I'm here representing the Draconian High Command. Your actions at Kithra Prime have been noted with great interest by our leadership. Sir, the humans have made a rather unprecedented proposal," Thek continued. "They want to establish formal rescue cooperation protocols between our species. Joint training exercises, shared medical knowledge, coordinated response procedures. It's ambitious and has significant political implications." Sarah felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. Have I caused some kind of diplomatic incident? Thek's expression shifted to what might have been amusement among humans. On the contrary, the High Command is intrigued by the possibilities. However, they want someone with direct experience in human draconian cooperation to oversee the initial phases of such a program. They want me to take the assignment, Sarah realized. It would mean a promotion to full commander rank, Thek added, and command of your own vessel within the joint task force. Martinez stepped forward again. There's something else you should know. The families you saved at Kithra Prime have pooled their resources to commission something special for you. The holographic display changed once more, showing detailed schematics of a ship unlike anything Sarah had seen before. It was clearly designed for search and rescue operations, but incorporated technology from both human and draconian sources. The vessel appeared to blend the best aspects of both species' engineering philosophies. The DSV Mercy, Chen announced, jointly built by human and draconian shipwrights, designed specifically for you. She's got human medical technology, draconian atmosphere processors, and hybrid engines that can operate in conditions that would destroy conventional vessels. The families of Kithra Prime wanted you to have a ship worthy of your heroism, Martinez added. She's fast, durable, and equipped to handle any rescue scenario we might encounter. Sarah stared at the ship's schematics, overwhelmed by the generosity being shown to her. This is too much. I cannot accept such gifts. With respect, Thek interjected, you may not have a choice. The political momentum behind this project has grown beyond what any of us initially anticipated. The story of your rescue has become symbolic of the potential for cooperation between our species. Chen activated another display showing news coverage from draconian space. It's not just humans who've been inspired by your actions. Your own people are celebrating you as an example of the highest virtues of draconian society. The images showed draconian news broadcasts discussing Sarah's heroism, interviews with citizens expressing pride in her actions, and what appear to be formal recognition ceremonies in her honor. The High Command has received numerous communications from human leaders expressing gratitude for your actions, Thek continued. They view this as an opportunity to strengthen diplomatic ties and explore new avenues for cooperation. Martinez leaned forward. The truth is, Sarah, what you did at Kithra Prime has changed things. Both our species are looking at this as a chance to build something better together. But we need someone who understands both cultures to make it work. What exactly will my role be? Sarah asked. You command the Joint Task Force, Thek explained. 7 ships, mixed crews, operating under both human and draconian authority. Your mission would be to respond to emergency situations throughout this sector while also serving as a test case for broader cooperation between our species. The crews would be volunteers from both fleets, Martinez added. Humans and draconians working side by side, learning from each other, proving that our species can accomplish more together than apart. Sarah looked around at the assembled officers, trying to process the magnitude of what they were proposing. When would this program begin? The ships are already being prepared, Chen said. The U.S. Mercy will be ready for trials within 2 months. The other vessels in the task force are being retrofitted for joint operations. What about training? Joint crews would need time to learn to work together effectively. That's been planned for, Martinez replied. We're establishing a joint training facility on Nexus Station. Human and draconian rescue specialists will work together to develop new protocols and procedures. Thek stepped closer. Scout Sarah, I must be frank with you. The political implications of this project extend far beyond simple rescue operations. If successful, this could serve as a model for broader cooperation between our species in science, exploration, and possibly even defense. And if it fails, then we'll have learned valuable lessons about the challenges of interspecies cooperation, Martinez said diplomatically. Sarah considered the proposal carefully. The scope was ambitious, perhaps overly so. But she thought about the 27 humans she had rescued, their determination and courage in the face of impossible odds. If that same spirit could be fostered in a joint rescue organization, the potential benefits were enormous. What about command structure? She asked. How would decisions be made in a mixed crew? We've developed a hybrid command model, Thek explained. You would serve as mission commander, with human and draconian exos handling species-specific concerns. Major decisions would require consensus between the command team. The crews have already been briefed on the command structure, Martinez added. Everyone volunteering for this assignment understands they'll be working under experimental protocols. Sarah walked to the viewport of her scout ship, looking out at the human fleet that had come to find her. The massive vessels represented the commitment of an entire species to an ideal of cooperation that had grown from her simple act of rescue. If I accept this position, she said slowly, I want certain guarantees. Name them, Thek said immediately. No mission is undertaken for political purposes. We serve those in need, regardless of species or political affiliation. Agreed, Martinez said. Joint crews must be trained to the highest standards. I won't risk lives with inadequate preparation. The training program has been designed with input from the best rescue specialists in both fleets, Chen assured her. And if political pressures threaten the integrity of the mission, I reserve the right to suspend operations until the issues are resolved. Thek nodded solemnly. The High Command has already agreed to those terms. Sarah turned back to face the assembled officers. Then, I accept the assignment. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Martinez stepped forward to shake her hand in the human fashion, while Thek performed the formal draconian gesture of respect. Chun simply smiled, her expression reflecting the satisfaction of someone who had seen her faith in another vindicated. When do we begin? Sarah asked. As soon as you could transfer your current assignments to another scout, Thek replied. The joint training program is scheduled to begin in 10 days. There's one more thing, Martinez said, activating the holographic display one final time. The families from Kithra Prime wanted you to see this. The hologram showed a small ceremony taking place on what appeared to be a civilian space station. Sarah recognized several of the people she had rescued, along with what she assumed were their families and friends. They were unveiling a memorial plaque that bore her image alongside text in both human and Draconian scripts. They've established a memorial garden in your honor, Chen explained. Every year on the anniversary of the rescue, they hold a ceremony to remember your actions and to honor others who risk their lives for strangers. Sarah felt something she couldn't quite name stirring in her chest as she watched the humans commemorating her actions. Their gratitude seemed genuine and deeply felt, expressed not just in words but in concrete actions that would benefit countless others. They really named a ship after me, she said quietly. The first of many, I suspect, Martinez replied. Your name will be remembered long after all of us are gone. As the human fleet prepared to escort her back to Nexus Station to begin her new assignment, Sarah reflected on the strange chain of events that had brought her to this moment. A routine distress call had somehow blossomed into an interspecies cooperation initiative that could reshape the relationship between humans and Draconians. She thought about the 27 miners trapped in that failing facility, their determination to survive and protect each other even in the face of certain death. Their courage had inspired her then, and apparently it continued to inspire others now. Perhaps that was what humans meant by paying it forward. The good that one person did could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond the original act of kindness. As her small scout ship joined the formation of human vessel for the journey to Nexus Station, Sarah realized that her quiet life as an independent explorer was ending. What lay ahead would be more challenging and complex, but also more meaningful. She was no longer just Scout Sarah. She was Commander Sarah, leader of the first Joint Human-Draconian Rescue Task Force, guardian of an ideal that transcended species boundaries. The transformation had begun with 27 humans and 1 dragon. But Sarah was beginning to understand that it would not end there. The joint training facility on Nexus Station was a marvel of improvised engineering. In just 2 weeks, human and Draconian engineers had converted an entire section of the massive space station into a specialized training complex. Sarah walked through the corridors on her first day, marveling at how seamlessly the 2 architectural styles had been blended. Commander Sarah's new rank felt strange on her shoulders as she entered the main briefing room. 7 crews from 2 different species awaited her arrival, their faces showing mixtures of curiosity, anticipation, and in some cases, barely concealed skepticism. The humans were easy to read. Their expressions were open, their emotions visible on their faces. The Draconians were more reserved, as was customary, but Sarah could sense their underlying tension through subtle changes in posture and scent. Good morning, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the room's enhanced acoustics. I'm Commander Sarah. For the next 6 months, we will be working together to create something that has never existed before, a truly integrated interspecies rescue organization. She activated the room's holographic display, showing the 7 ships that would comprise their task force. Each vessel had been modified to accommodate mixed crews, with duplicate environmental systems and communication protocols designed for both species. Our mission is simple in concept, but complex in execution, Sarah continued. We will respond to emergency situations throughout this sector, providing aid to any beings in distress regardless of their species or political affiliation. A human officer raised her hand. Lieutenant Torres, according to Sarah's files, had served with distinction in the Colonial Defense Force's Search and Rescue Division. Commander, what's our authority structure when dealing with sovereign governments that might not welcome intervention? En excellente question sera replied. We operate under emergency rescue protocols established by the Galactic Rescue Coordination Council. Our authority to intervene is limited to situations where lives are in immediate danger and local authorities are unable or unwilling to provide adequate assistance. A Draconian engineer spoke up, his voice carrying the formal tones of his rank. Commander, how do we handle situations where human and Draconian protocols conflict? We adapt, Sarah said simply. Our training will focus on developing hybrid procedures that incorporate the best aspects of both approaches. When in doubt, we prioritize saving lives over following regulations. The room buzzed with quiet conversations as the assembled crews digested this information. Sarah could sense both excitement and apprehension among the volunteers. Before we begin formal training, Sarah announced, I want each crew to spend time learning about their counterparts from the other species. You'll be rotating through mixed teams over the next week, working on basic exercises designed to build trust and understanding. She gestured to two officers who had been standing near the back of the room. Captain Liu of the UES Steadfast and Captain Vorth of the DCS Windcutter will serve as my executive officers, coordinating the training program and helping resolve any issues that arise. Captain Liu stepped forward. She was a compact woman in her 40s with the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of successful command. We've prepared simulation scenarios based on actual rescue operations from both human and draconian databases. These exercises will help us identify potential problems and develop solutions before we encounter them in the field. Captain Vorth, an imposing draconian with distinctive silver scales along his neck crest, added, medical protocols present particular challenges. Human and draconian physiologies respond differently to various treatments. Our medical teams will need extensive cross-training to provide effective care to both species. Sarah nodded approvingly. Questions? A young human ensign raised her hand hesitantly. Commander, is it true that you rescued 27 people from Kythera Prime by yourself? The room fell silent. Sarah could sense the intensity of attention focused on her as everyone waited for her answer. I responded to a distress call, Sarah said carefully. The humans trapped there saved themselves through their own courage and determination. I simply provided transportation. But you made 3 trips through a collapsing facility, another human pressed. The report said you physically tore through debris barriers to reach the survivors. Reports often exaggerate, Sarah replied, uncomfortable with the hero worship she detected in some of the humans' expressions. What matters is that everyone survived. That's our goal in every mission we undertake. She could see that her deflection hadn't fooled anyone. The humans especially seemed determined to view her as some kind of legendary figure. This could become a problem if it created unrealistic expectations or interfered with normal command dynamics. Let's begin with our first exercise, Sarah announced, hoping to redirect attention to the task at hand. The first simulation was deceptively simple. A passenger transport had suffered catastrophic engine failure in deep space. The ship was losing life support and needed immediate evacuation. 2 crews, 1 human and 1 draconian, would coordinate the rescue operation. Sarah watched from the observation deck as the mixed teams struggled with basic communication issues. The human crew's rapid-fire decision-making style clashed with the draconians' more deliberate approach to problem-solving. Radio chatter became confused as both species tried to coordinate using their own protocols. Time, Captain Liu called as the simulation ended. Let's review what happened. The debriefing was enlightening. Both crews had been successful in their individual tasks, but their coordination had been abysmal. The rescue operation that should have taken 40 minutes had stretched to over an hour due to miscommunication and conflicting procedures. The humans kept interrupting our status reports, complained a draconian engineer. We couldn't provide complete information. Your reports take too long, responded human pilot. In emergency situations, we need critical data immediately, not a comprehensive analysis. Sarah stepped in before the discussion could become heated. Both approaches have merit. Humans excel at rapid response and quick decision-making. Draconians are thorough and methodical. We need to find ways to combine these strengths. She activated the briefing room's display again, showing a modified communication protocol she had developed during her flight to the station. We'll use a hybrid reporting system, she announced. Initial contact provides immediate critical data using human rapid response formats. Follow-up reports include detailed analysis using draconian thoroughness standards. Both crews get the information they need when they need it. The next simulation went better. The crews adapted to the new communication protocols and their coordination improved significantly. But new problems emerged. A human medical officer attempted to treat a simulated draconian casualty using standard human procedures. The computer simulation indicated that the treatment would have been harmful to draconian physiology. "This is more complex than we anticipated," Captain Vorth observed during the debrief. "Our medical databases contain limited information about cross-species treatment protocols. We need joint medical training," Sarah agreed. "I'm requesting that we bring in specialist physicians from both species to develop comprehensive treatment guidelines." As the days progressed, the training scenarios became increasingly complex. The crews faced situations involving hostile environments, equipment failures, and casualties from multiple species. Gradually, they began to function as integrated teams rather than two separate groups trying to work together. Sarah found herself impressed by the adaptability of both species. The humans brought innovation and flexibility to problem solving, often finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible challenges. The Draconians provided stability and expertise, their methodical approach preventing critical oversights that could endanger rescue operations. But it was during the fourth week of training that the real test came. An actual emergency occurred in a nearby system. A mining station on an asteroid had suffered a catastrophic accident, trapping dozens of workers in collapsed tunnels. Local authorities were overwhelmed and had requested assistance from any available rescue services. "This is not a simulation," Sarah announced as alarms sounded throughout the training facility. "We have a real emergency situation. All crews to your ships immediately." The response was electric. Months of training kicked in as the mixed crews raced to their vessels, conducting pre-flight checks and emergency preparations with practiced efficiency. Sarah felt a surge of pride as she watched humans and Draconians working together seamlessly. The DSV Mercy had arrived from the shipyards just days before, and this would be its first operational test. As Sarah settled into the command chair of her new ship, she marveled at how perfectly the vessel had been designed for her needs. Human engineering efficiency merged with Draconian aesthetic sensibilities created something both beautiful and functional. "All ships report ready for departure," Captain Liu announced from the communication station. "Jump in 60 seconds, Sarah commanded. "Remember, this is what we've been training for. Stay focused, trust your partners, and let's bring everyone home." The 7 ships of the Joint Task Force jumped to hyperspace as one, their formation precise despite the mixed crews and hybrid technologies. During the journey, detailed reports came in about the situation at the mining station. The asteroid mining facility had been extracting rare Earth elements when a seismic event triggered multiple tunnel collapses. 43 workers were trapped in various locations throughout the facility, some with serious injuries. The station's own rescue equipment was inadequate for the scope of the disaster. Estimated time for local authorities to mount an effective rescue? Sarah asked. "Minimum 18 hours, Captain Vorth reported. "The nearest heavy rescue equipment is in another system. That's too long. We need to assume that some of the trapped workers are critically injured." As they approached the asteroid, Sarah deployed her ships in a coordinated pattern around the mining facility. Each vessel had specialized equipment for different aspects of the rescue operation. UES Steadfast and DCS Wind Cutter establish perimeter and coordinate with local authorities, Sarah ordered. Mercy, Prophet, and Harmony begin assessment of structural damage. Guardian and Shield prepare for heavy lifting operations. The mining station was a maze of tunnels and chambers carved directly into the asteroid. The seismic event had caused multiple collapses, creating a three-dimensional puzzle that would challenge even experienced rescue teams. "Commander, Lieutenant Torres reported from the station. We've established communication with 17 of the trapped workers. They're organized into 3 main groups, but conditions are deteriorating rapidly." "What about the other 26? Sarah asked. "No contact. They could be unconscious, trapped in areas with communication equipment damage." Or Torres left the sentence unfinished. Sarah studied the facility schematics that local authorities had provided. The collapsed sections formed a complex pattern that would require careful coordination to clear safely. Captain Liu, I want Draconian structural engineers working with human heavy equipment operators, she commanded. Our people know tunnel engineering, yours know rapid excavation techniques. Already coordinating, Liu replied. We're forming mixed teams for each major collapse site. The rescue operation that followed became a textbook example of interspecies cooperation. Human operators, guided by Draconian engineers' understanding of rock mechanics, cleared debris with remarkable speed and precision. Draconian atmospheric specialists worked with human medical teams to establish safe zones where casualties could be treated. The first group of trapped workers was reached within 2 hours. All 7 were alive, though several had serious injuries from falling rocks. The joint medical team treated both human and alien casualties with equal skill, applying the cross-species protocols they had developed during training. Group 2 is more challenging, reported the team leader at the second collapse site. The tunnel is completely blocked, but we can hear voices on the other side. Estimated time to clear? Sarah asked. 4 hours minimum. The debris pile is massive and unstable. Sarah studied the facility plans again. There's a maintenance shaft that runs parallel to that tunnel. Could we access it from there? A Draconian engineer checked his readings. The shaft is partially collapsed, but a small team could get through. It would be dangerous. I'll go. Volunteered a human rescue specialist. I can fit through spaces the Draconians can't. Not alone, insisted a Draconian team member. I'll provide structural assessment as you advance. Sarah watched as the mixed team made their way through the damaged maintenance shaft. The humans' agility combined with the Draconians' expertise allowed them to navigate obstacles that would have stopped a single-species team. When they reached the trapped workers, they found a scene that reinforced everything Sarah had learned about human resilience. The 12 trapped miners had organized themselves into an efficient survival group. They had pooled their emergency supplies, treated each other's injuries, and maintained morale despite their dire situation. How long have you been trapped? The rescuer asked as he squeezed to the final barrier. 14 hours, replied the group's leader. We were starting to think nobody was coming. Nobody gets left behind, the human rescuer replied, echoing the phrase Sarah had heard so many times. We're getting you out. The evacuation of the second group took another 3 hours, but every member survived. The third group proved the most challenging, trapped in a section of the facility that had suffered complete structural collapse. No response to communication attempts, reported the team at the site. But thermal imaging shows possible life signs deeper in the rubble. How deep? Sarah asked. 30 meters through unstable debris. Any attempt to excavate could trigger another collapse. Sarah considered their options. Traditional rescue techniques would take too long, and the thermal signatures suggested that the trapped workers were running out of time. What about precision blasting, she asked. Could we create a controlled collapse that opens access routes? The Draconian explosives expert studied the problem carefully. Possible, but extremely risky. The calculations would need to be perfect. I can do the calculations, offered a human structural engineer. But I need a Draconian to verify the rock mechanics. What followed was an hour of intense collaboration between human and Draconian specialists. They modeled the explosion patterns, analyzed stress points in the remaining structure, and calculated exactly how much force would be needed to create access tunnels without causing further collapses. The controlled detonation was a work of art. Tiny charges precisely placed and timed shattered key sections of debris while leaving supporting elements intact. When the dust cleared, a narrow but stable passage led directly to the trapped workers. All 14 members of the third group were alive when rescue teams reached them. Several were unconscious from oxygen deprivation, and 2 had serious crush injuries, but the joint medical team stabilized everyone for transport. Final count. Captain Liu reported as the last casualties were loaded aboard medical ships. 43 workers trapped, 43 workers rescued. No fatalities. The response from the mining station's management was overwhelming gratitude. Local authorities, who had initially been skeptical of the Joint Task Force's capabilities, were now requesting permanent assignment of rescue assets to the sector. But it was during the post-operation debrief that Sarah truly understood what they had accomplished. "Commander," said a human equipment operator who had worked closely with Draconian engineers throughout the rescue, "I learned more about structural engineering in one day than I had in 10 years of training. Your people think about problems completely differently than we do." A Draconian medical technician nodded agreement. "Human emergency medicine techniques save lives today that our traditional methods couldn't have reached in time. The combination of our approaches was far more effective than either alone." Captain Vorth summed up the sentiment that Sarah could see in faces throughout the room. "This operation succeeded because we weren't just human crews and Draconian crews working in the same area. We became integrated teams, each member contributing their unique strengths to achieve something none of us could have accomplished alone." Sarah felt a deep satisfaction as she reviewed the mission reports. The rescue at the mining station had validated everything they had hoped to achieve with the Joint Task Force. More importantly, it had demonstrated to both species that cooperation produced results far superior to what either could achieve independently. News of the successful rescue spread quickly through both human and Draconian space. The Joint Task Force's reputation was established, and requests for assistance began arriving from across the sector. But Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The real test of their partnership would come when they faced challenges that couldn't be solved with engineering expertise and determination alone. There were dangers in the galaxy that would test not just their skills, but the very bonds of trust and cooperation they were building. As the task force returned to Nexus Station for resupply and crew rotation, Sarah began planning for the next phase of their operations. They had proven that humans and Draconians could work together effectively. Now, they needed to prove that their alliance could endure under pressure. The 27 humans she had rescued at Kythera Prime had taught her about the power of determination and mutual support. The joint rescue at the mining station had shown her what was possible when that same spirit was shared between species. Sarah suspected that she would need both lessons for whatever challenges lay ahead. 6 months after the mining station rescue, Commander Sarah's Joint Task Force had become a legendary presence throughout the Outer Rim sectors. They had responded to 47 emergency situations, saving hundreds of lives from 17 different species. The success had been so overwhelming that both human and Draconian governments were considering expanding the program to other sectors. But success brought new challenges. As Sarah reviewed the latest intelligence reports in her ready room aboard the DSV Mercy, she felt a familiar knot of concern forming in her stomach. "Pirates," she said aloud, studying the tactical display that Captain Liu had prepared. "Not just any pirates," Liu replied grimly. "The Crimson Void Syndicate. They've been hitting rescue operations throughout this sector for the past month." The Crimson Void had earned a reputation as one of the most ruthless criminal organizations operating in the Outer Rim. They specialized in attacking vulnerable targets, particularly ships engaged in rescue operations when they were least prepared for combat. "Their pattern is consistent," Captain Vorth added from his position near the holographic display. "They monitor emergency frequencies, then arrive after rescue teams have committed to operations. They attack when the rescuers are most vulnerable." Sarah studied the tactical information with growing concern. The Syndicate's ships were fast and heavily armed, designed specifically for hit and run attacks against civilian targets. More troubling was their apparent intelligence network, which allowed them to anticipate rescue operations before they were publicly announced. "Casualties?" she asked. 17 rescue workers killed in the past month," Liu reported quietly. 3 ships destroyed, 2 captured. The captured crews haven't been heard from since. This is targeted, Sarah realized. They're not just raiding rescue operations, opportunistically. They're specifically hunting rescue teams. Intelligence suggests they're trying to create a climate of fear, Vorth explained. If rescue operations become too dangerous, fewer ships will respond to distress calls. That creates opportunities for the Syndicate to loot disabled vessels without interference. Sarah felt anger building in her chest at the calculated cruelty of the strategy. The Syndicate was essentially holding helpless civilians hostage to prevent rescue operations. "What's the local government response?" she asked. "Limited," Lou admitted. "The Outer Rim territories don't have sufficient patrol assets to provide escort for every rescue operation. They've issued warnings, but they can't guarantee protection. So rescue teams are being forced to choose between risking attack and abandoning people in need," Sarah concluded. "That's exactly the situation the Syndicate wants," Vorth agreed. Sarah walked to the viewport of her ready room, looking out at the stars. Somewhere among those distant suns, people in desperate need were wondering if help would come, while their potential rescuers weighed the risks of responding. "What's the current status of rescue operations in the sector?" she asked. "Down 60%, Lou reported. "Most independent rescue services have suspended operations. Even some military units are requiring escort before responding to distress calls. So the Syndicate strategy is working." "Yes, Commander." Sarah turned back to her officers. "What do we know about their current location?" Vorth activated a star chart showing the recent pattern of attacks. "They appear to be operating from a base somewhere in the Hades Nebula. It's a perfect hiding spot full of sensor-blocking gas clouds and unstable energy fields. Searching the entire nebula would take months with the resources we have available," Lou added. Sarah studied the chart carefully, noting the pattern of attacks and the timing involved. The Syndicate was clearly well-organized and disciplined with good intelligence and tactical planning. "They're watching us," she realized suddenly. "Commander?" Vorth asked. "Look at the attack pattern. They've hit every major rescue organization in the sector except us. Either they're saving us for last, or they're studying our operations." Lou frowned as she considered the implications. "If they're monitoring our communications, they could be planning something specific. Or they could be planning to use us as bait," Sarah added grimly. The communication system in her ready room chimed with an incoming priority message. Sarah activated the display and found herself looking at the worried face of Admiral Chun, the same Commander Chun she had rescued at Kythera Prime, now promoted to lead the sector's Emergency Coordination Center. "Commander Sarah," Chun began without preamble, "we have a situation that requires immediate response." "Go ahead, Admiral." Passenger liner Stellar Dawn has suffered catastrophic engine failure in the Typhon system. She's carrying 800 civilians, including 60 children. Life support is failing, and we estimate 12 hours before conditions become critical. Sarah felt her tactical instincts engaging. "What's the threat assessment?" Chin admitted. "The Typhon system is at the edge of known Syndicate operating area. Intelligence suggests a 70% probability of pirate interference. Other rescue assets. None available with the speed and capacity needed to evacuate 800 people in the time available. You're the only option, Sarah." Sarah exchanged glances with her officers. The situation was exactly what they had been dreading, a legitimate emergency that required immediate response, in an area where the Syndicate was likely to attack. "We'll respond immediately," Sarah said without hesitation. "But we'll need to assume hostile contact." "I've authorized military escort," Chun replied. 2 heavy cruisers will rendezvous with your task force en route." "Understood. We're moving now." As soon as the communication ended, Sarah was in motion. "All ships, emergency stations. We have 800 civilians in distress, possible hostile contact." The Joint Task Force responded with the precision that had been drilled into them through months of training and operational experience. 7 ships moved into formation around the Mercy, their mixed crews conducting rapid pre-combat checks while maintaining rescue readiness. During the hyperspace journey to the Typhon system, Sarah convened an emergency briefing with her command staff. "Tactical assessment," she requested. "The Stellar Dawn is dead in space at the edge of the system's asteroid field," Captain Liu reported. "Perfect position for an ambush. The asteroids provide cover for attacking ships, while limiting our maneuvering options." "Rescue parameters?" Sarah asked. 800 people, multiple species, including 60 children under age 12, Captain Vorth replied. We'll need all 7 ships to evacuate them quickly. Estimated time for complete evacuation, 4 hours. Time available before life support failure, 12 hours when we arrive, but that assumes optimal conditions. If the ship suffers additional damage during combat, that timeline could collapse rapidly. Sarah studied the tactical display showing the Typhon system. The asteroid field created a complex, three-dimensional maze that would challenge even experienced pilots. In combat, it would become a deadly obstacle course. Military escort status? 2 heavy cruisers, UES Retribution and UES Vengeance, Liu reported. Both experienced in anti-pirate operations. They'll establish a defensive perimeter while we conduct evacuation. Rules of engagement: defend the rescue operation at all costs, came the reply. The civilians take priority over everything else. As they approached the Typhon system, Sarah's sensors detected the disabled passenger liner exactly where intelligence had indicated. The massive ship hung motionless in space, its emergency beacons painting a picture of desperation that every rescue worker recognized. Initial scan of the stellar dawn, Sarah ordered. 812 life signs confirmed, the sensor operator reported. Life support operating at 40% efficiency and declining. No immediate signs of panic, but stress indicators are elevated throughout the ship. Good. Their crew is maintaining order. That will make evacuation easier. The 2 military escorts arrived precisely on schedule, their heavy cruisers taking positions that could cover the most likely attack vectors. Sarah felt marginally better about their defensive situation, though she knew that determined pirates could still cause significant problems. Begin evacuation operations, she commanded. All ships maintain maximum alert status. The evacuation of the Stellar Dawn proceeded with clockwork efficiency. The Joint Task Force had refined their passenger transfer procedures through months of practice, and both human and Draconian crews worked seamlessly together to move civilians from the crippled liner to the rescue ships. Sarah monitored the operation from the Mercy's command deck, watching as families were reunited, children comforted, and injuries treated. The civilians showed remarkable composure despite their frightening situation, trusting in the professionalism of their rescuers. It was during the 3rd hour of operations that the trap was sprung. Multiple contacts emerging from asteroid field, the tactical officer reported with controlled urgency. 12 ships, syndicate configuration. They're moving to surround us. Sarah felt the familiar combat tension flooding her system. Military escort, engage enemy ships. All rescue vessels, continue evacuation operations. Commander, Captain Liu called from the communication station. The syndicate ships are broadcasting on open frequencies. They want to talk. Put them through. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the scarred face of someone who could only be a syndicate commander. His ship's bridge was visible behind him, a mixture of high-tech weapons systems and improvised repairs that spoke of a life spent outside legitimate space. I am Captain Reeves of the Crimson Void, the pirate leader announced with cold confidence. You will cease rescue operations immediately and withdraw from this system. Negative, Sarah replied without hesitation. We have civilians in distress. Our mission continues. Reeves smiled, and the expression was genuinely chilling. Commander Sarah, I presume. The famous dragon who thinks she can save everyone. I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. Withdraw your ships now, and we'll allow the civilians to die quickly when their life support fails. Continue your rescue operation, and we'll board that liner and kill them slowly, one by one, starting with the children. Sarah felt her anger spike at the casual threat against innocence. Around her, she could see similar reactions on the faces of her crew, both human and draconian. You're outnumbered, she pointed out. 2 heavy cruisers and 7 rescue ships against 12 pirate vessels. Are we? Reeves asked mockingly. Check your sensors again. The tactical display updated with horrifying clarity. 20 additional syndicate ships had emerged from concealment throughout the asteroid field. The pirates hadn't just set an ambush. They had laid a trap with overwhelming force. 32 ships, Captain Vorth reported quietly. They outgun us 3-1. Reeves continued speaking as if he could hear their tactical assessment. This isn't about robbery, Commander. This is about sending a message. Rescue operations in this sector end today. Your task force will be destroyed, and word will spread that even the famous Human-Dragon Alliance couldn't stand against us. Sarah realized with crystal clarity what was happening. The Syndicate hadn't just been studying their operations. They had been planning this specific engagement. They wanted to destroy the Joint Task Force publicly and brutally, using the massacre as an example to prevent future rescue operations. You've made one mistake, Sarah said calmly. And what's that? Reeves asked with amusement. You threatened children in front of humans, Sarah replied. And you threatened innocents in front of Draconians. You've just united our species against you more completely than any treaty ever could. She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. All ships, combat stations. We're not abandoning those civilians. Commander, Captain Liu said urgently. The tactical situation is hopeless. Even if we fight with everything we have, they can overwhelm us with pure numbers. Then, we'll have to be smarter than they are, Sarah replied. Captain Vorth, how long to complete the evacuation? 90 minutes at current rate. Military escort, can you give us 90 minutes? Negative, came the reply from UES Retribution. We can hold them for maybe 30 minutes before they break through our defensive line. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possible solutions. The asteroid field that had seemed like such a disadvantage might actually provide opportunities for a creative defense. New plan, she announced. We're going to use the asteroids against them. Commander, Captain Vorth asked. The Syndicate ships are spread throughout the asteroid field to prevent our escape. That means they're operating in close proximity to large masses of rock and metal. What happens if those asteroids start moving? Liu caught on immediately. Kinetic bombardment. We use the asteroids as weapons. Exactly. Captain Liu, coordinate with a military escort. I want precise targeting on key asteroids. Small explosions, carefully placed to send large rocks toward concentrations of enemy ships. The calculations will be enormously complex, Vorth warned. Asteroid trajectories in a three-dimensional field, multiple gravitational influences, moving targets. Then, it's a good thing we have the best computational specialists in two different species, Sarah replied. Give me firing solutions. What followed was perhaps the most complex tactical calculation ever attempted in combat conditions. Human rapid processing capabilities combined with draconian precision analysis to plot asteroid trajectories that would maximize damage to the Syndicate fleet while minimizing risk to the rescue operation. First salvo ready, Liu reported. Fire. The heavy cruisers opened fire on 17 different asteroids simultaneously. The precisely placed explosions sent massive chunks of rock and metal tumbling through space toward the Syndicate ships. The pirates, caught off guard by the unconventional attack, found themselves dodging multi-ton projectiles while trying to maintain their attack formation. Direct hits on 3 enemy ships, the tactical officer reported. 2 destroyed, 1 disabled. But the Syndicate adapted quickly. Their remaining ships began moving to avoid the asteroid bombardment while pressing their attack on the rescue vessels. Enemy ships are breaking through the perimeter, Captain Vorth reported. They're targeting the evacuation transports. Sarah watched as enemy fire began to converge on her ships. The rescue vessels were lightly armed and armored, designed for saving lives rather than fighting battles. They wouldn't be able to withstand concentrated fire from the Syndicate fleet. All rescue ships, evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Use the asteroids for cover, but maintain evacuation operations. What followed was a deadly game of three-dimensional hide and seek among the asteroids. Sarah's ships used their superior maneuverability to stay ahead of the larger Syndicate vessels while continuing to evacuate civilians from the disabled liner. But the enemy was closing in and time was running out. Evacuation status? Sera demandé. 650 civilians evacuated, Vorth reported. 162 remaining on the Stellar Dawn, including all 60 children. 43 children evacuated, 17 still aboard. Sarah felt her determination crystallize into something harder than diamond. Those children would not die on her watch. New plan, she announced. All rescue ships, except Mercy, withdraw to safe distance with evacuated civilians. Mercy will complete the evacuation alone. Commander, that's suicide, Lou protested. You'll be completely outnumbered with no backup. Those children need someone to get them out, Sarah replied simply. And I'm not leaving without them. She could see the protests forming on her officers' faces, but she cut them off with a gesture. That's an order. Get the civilians to safety. I'll handle the rest. As her task force reluctantly withdrew, Sarah maneuvered the Mercy closer to the Stellar Dawn. The remaining 17 children and 145 adults were clustered in the ship's forward compartments, waiting for rescue that might never come. Sarah, came a transmission from Admiral Chun. Don't do this. Those children aren't worth losing the entire Joint Task Force program. With respect, Admiral, Sarah replied, every one of those children is worth everything we've built. That's why we built it. The Syndicate ships converged on her position, sensing that their primary target was finally vulnerable. Sarah counted 28 vessels moving to attack the Mercy, their combined firepower enough to destroy her ship in minutes. But she wasn't planning to fight them. Computer, activate Emergency Override Protocol 77 Alpha, she commanded. Warning, the ship's artificial intelligence responded. Protocol 77 Alpha will result in catastrophic engine overload. Survival probability approaches 0. I know, Sarah said quietly. Execute protocol. The Mercy's engines began building to dangerous overload levels as Sarah positioned her ship between the attacking pirates and the disabled liner. When the Syndicate ships opened fire, she triggered the protocol. The explosion of the Mercy's overloaded engines created a massive energy pulse that disabled every ship within a 50-kilometer radius. The electromagnetic wave fried electronics throughout the Syndicate fleet, leaving most of their vessels dead in space. In the aftermath of the explosion, as rescue ships raced back to search for survivors, they found something impossible. The DSV Mercy had been torn apart by the explosion, but its armored command section had survived intact. Inside, they found Commander Sarah, unconscious but alive, protected by the emergency system she had activated just before the detonation. More importantly, they found the evacuation complete. In the final moments before triggering the overload, Sarah had managed to rescue the last 17 children and 145 adults from the Stellar Dawn. When Sarah regained consciousness 3 days later in the medical bay of Nexus Station, the first face she saw was Admiral Chen's. The children? Sarah asked immediately. All safe, Chen replied with a smile. 812 civilians evacuated successfully. 0 casualties. The task force, intact and operational. You saved more than just those civilians. Sarah, you saved the entire rescue program. Word of what you did has spread throughout both human and draconian space. Chun activated a holographic display showing news broadcasts from across the galaxy. The story of the Battle of Typhon had captured the imagination of countless beings, and Sarah found herself watching reports that described her actions in terms that made her uncomfortable. They're calling me a hero again, she observed. You are a hero, Chen replied simply. But more than that, you've proven something important about cooperation between our species. When humans and draconians work together, we can accomplish things that seem impossible. As Sarah recovered, she learned the full scope of what had happened at Typhon. The destruction of the Syndicate fleet had broken their organization's power in the sector. More importantly, the rescue at Typhon had inspired a new wave of cooperation between human and draconian forces. Additional joint task forces were being organized throughout the galaxy. The model that Sarah had helped create was spreading, bringing together species that had never cooperated before. But, perhaps most significantly, the story of the Battle of Typhon had become legendary among rescue workers throughout known space. The image of a single dragon taking on an entire pirate fleet to save 17 children had captured imaginations and inspired a new generation of beings to join emergency services. As she prepared to return to duty, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that first distress call from Kythera Prime. What had begun with 27 trapped humans had grown into something that was reshaping relationships between species throughout the galaxy. The Joint Task Force had proven that cooperation could achieve the impossible. But, more than that, it had shown that the simple act of refusing to abandon those in need could inspire others to acts of heroism that created ripple effects across the stars. Sarah suspected that the greatest tests of their alliance still lay ahead. But she also knew that whatever challenges they faced, they would face them together, human and draconian, united in the conviction that no one should be left behind. 2 months after the Battle of Typhon, Commander Sarah stood on the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching the most extraordinary sight she had ever witnessed. Ships were arriving in unprecedented numbers, not for an emergency or military operation, but for something that defied all her expectations. They had come to thank her. The first ships to arrive had been the families of the Kythera Prime survivors, now numbering in the hundreds as word spread through human space about the memorial gathering being organized. But as days passed, the arrivals had multiplied beyond anything the organizers had anticipated. Status report, Sarah requested as Admiral Chun joined her on the observation deck. 1,200 ships, and counting, Chun replied, her voice filled with wonder. Humans, draconians, and 17 other species. They're still coming. Through the massive viewport, Sarah could see vessels of every conceivable size and configuration. Massive human colony ships floated alongside sleek, draconian explorers. Civilian transports mixed with military escorts. Freighters, passenger liners, and private yachts had all made the journey to Nexus Station. This was supposed to be a simple memorial ceremony for the Kythera Prime families, Sarah said, still struggling to process the scale of what was happening. It was, Chun agreed, until word got out about what you did at Typhon. Then, it became something else entirely. The memorial gathering had been organized by the children rescued from Kythera Prime, now grown to adulthood, and wanted to honor the dragon who had saved their parents. It was meant to be a private ceremony, a chance for the survivors and their families to express their gratitude in person. But the story of the Battle of Typhon had spread throughout the galaxy with remarkable speed. The image of a single rescue ship facing down an entire pirate fleet to save 17 children had captured imaginations across species boundaries. What began as a small memorial had become a spontaneous gathering of beings who had been inspired by Sarah's actions. Commander Sarah to the main briefing room. Came an announcement over the station's communication system. When Sarah arrived at the briefing room, she found it filled with an extraordinary assembly of beings. The original Kythera Prime survivors were there, of course, but they had been joined by representatives from dozens of species and organizations. Captain Martinez stepped forward, now wearing the insignia of a fleet admiral. Commander Sarah, on behalf of everyone gathered here, I want to present you with something. He activated the room's holographic display, which showed the familiar image of a massive starship under construction. But this wasn't the UES Sarah that had been named after her earlier. This vessel was larger, more advanced, and clearly designed for purposes beyond simple rescue operations. The GSV Unity, Martinez announced, the first ship of the new Galactic Alliance Emergency Response Fleet, joint construction by 7 different species, incorporating the most advanced rescue technologies ever developed. Sarah stared at the holographic ship in amazement. It was beautiful, its design clearly influenced by the success of the joint task forces she had helped create. But more than that, it represented something unprecedented in galactic history. 7 species worked together to design and build this, she asked. The project started with humans and draconians, Admiral Chin explained. But as word spread about the Joint Task Force program, other species asked to participate. The Centauri provided advanced medical systems. The Altarians contributed navigation technology. The Vegan Confederation designed the atmosphere processors. A being Sarah didn't recognize stepped forward. Its translator collar identified it as speaking for the Epsilon Eridani Coalition. Your actions at Kythera Prime and Typhon have shown us what can be accomplished when species work together for the good of all. We want to be part of building that future. This is just the beginning, added another representative, this one from the Tau Ceti Federation. 7 more ships are planned, each one representing the combined efforts of our various civilizations. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the scope of what she was being shown. The simple act of rescuing 27 humans had somehow grown into a galactic movement toward cooperation and mutual aid. There's something else, Martinez said, gesturing toward the display again. The hologram shifted to show detailed specifications of the Unity. As Sarah read the technical data, she realized the ship was more than just an advanced rescue vessel. It was a mobile headquarters designed to coordinate emergency response across multiple systems simultaneously. The